Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are here with Randy Swaim, our international amazing coach, friend, author, aviator. There's too much. Bring freedom to potential. He's helping so many. Coachingforrelevance.com and so much more. Welcome back today. How are you?
I'm doing good, and it's always a pleasure to be with you here. So, yeah, it's good to see you again and glad to be here.
Same here. Thanks so much. So first and foremost, please introduce yourself to everyone. Tell us a little about what you do, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Well, that could take about an hour. No, I'm just kidding.
I know.
But like you said, a lot of what you said is me. My name is Randy Swaim, and my passion is bringing freedom to potential to other people, and using coaching skills and leadership, and developing and certifying jet pilots and flight crews and other leaders and things like that. And I'm also, as I think you know, I'm also a certified master level neuroplastician with the Institute for Organizational Neuroscience over in Germany. And so I bring aspects of how the brain works to people, and to over at the airport, but also people that you're talking to, even if it's teenagers at high school when I'm talking to them or whatever, kind of thing. So it's that's just a lot of what I do. And as you can see, Coaching for Relevance is my company, and that's if anybody ever wants to just have a chat, they can give me a call or something. But I don't do real sales pitches. I mean, if somebody comes up with a need, yeah, we'll come up with something. But if somebody just wants to have a conversation, we can do that.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. Pleasure to have you back. And what did you have in mind for today? What is our area of focus? You always have something exciting going on.
Well, I'll tell you what I thought I would share today is a little bit of the neuroscience aspect of it. And some of these aspects I've mentioned a long time ago on shows and stuff. But what I want to do is bring out an aspect of it that leaders need to be aware of when you're dealing with your people. And I'll bring out one aspect that sometimes people don't think about, and it makes it more of an art form and more of a challenge than people tend to think. And so I'll kind of mention that as we go into this.
All right.
Cool. Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. I was like nervous. I'm like,
okay.
Am I frozen? Go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and go into this, and I'll just mention it. And one of the things that I'll mention on this is the neuroscience aspects. And when you're talking about the brain and how it works and how it interacts, there's a lot you can deal with in there. But what I'm going to bring out today is the aspect, and all of these are very aligned with my organizational maneuverability concept, which is trying to lead your team in a rapidly changing, unpredictable VUCA environment where not everything is rote academic. And can you still be successful? And that's I'm going to bring some of that out in this as we go forward. But the first thing that I'll do is I'll just mention it's really the chemicals that your brain releases for certain things. When your brain starts to perceive certain things, it releases chemicals. And it's interesting, and I'll just kind of mention those chemicals very quickly here. I've mentioned them on a show quite a while back and stuff, but just for anybody that may not have heard it yet. But the first chemical that the brain releases is the chemical of norepinephrine. And what this chemical does when it releases, it's an alarm siren in your brain. And what it does is it will engender a person's ability to fight against the threat, or to step aside because of the threat and go over here.
Okay.
And everything. And so norepinephrine is kind of that alarm siren, if you will, particularly when you're experiencing a threat. The second one, and I'll just mention the other 3 or 4 here really quickly, kind of thing. But cortisol, is basically, it's a common stress hormone. If you are completely under stress, guess what? It's going to be releasing cortisol, and that's going to enhance and make your feeling of that stress really something kind of thing. And so that's the cortisol on that. It's a chronic stress hormone, if you will. And then the other one, the next one is dopamine. And you've heard me mention this several times on shows, but the dopamine chemical is one that figures and triggers off a feeling of reward
Okay.
in
Yeah.
people. And one of the things that I tell people is they become dependent on that. And sometimes it's called a dopamine fix, where they don't care about reality and they don't care about what's really being successful. They care about on whether they're going to get a pat on the back for it, kind of thing, and that kind of thing. But the dopamine is the chemical that your brain releases to engender a feeling of reward. Then the last two here, one is called serotonin, and basically serotonin brings a calm state in whatever's going on, where people can just kind of relax and
Mm-hmm.
feel at peace and go to sleep, kind of thing. And that is that is the serotonin. And then the other one is the last one is the concept of oxytocin. And what
Okay.
this is a chemical that your brain releases in order to try to make you thrive socially, perhaps in people that you're connecting with or whatever kind of thing. So every one of those five chemicals are chemicals that your brain will release based on what it perceives and based on what it feels like it's experiencing.
Okay.
But here's the thing that I want to kind of get across to leaders out there that are in this environment and in a rapidly changing environment that is not all just real simple. And here's the challenge with that, because what a lot of people will do when they hear that is they kind of focus on a rote academic picture. Well, I have to make sure that doesn't happen, or I got to make sure that doesn't happen. And most anybody has probably heard at least one manager out there that has simply said, well, that should have been like this, kind of thing. And it wasn't, and everything like that. But here's the thing that I kind of throw out to people. When you talk about a person's brain chemical releasing and how that's making their vision and their experience and all of that, you have to kind of be aware of one key thing that a lot of people don't. That's not a
Which is
pure
what?
that's not a purely academic
Okay.
picture, because guess what? Everybody that works for you is a little different. You know what? The chemicals that your brain releases, it may be that because of one person's experience, they go to norepinephrine that quick and they're ready to fight and get mad and, that kind of thing. Um, but there's another one where even in challenging situations, somebody may have a sense of peace and all of that kind of thing. And so the leader needs to understand you can't just simply go, it's good to know that information, by the way, and it's good to know how the brain works. But one of the things that you have to think about as a leader is each person in your team is a little different. If you have people that have had, that have lived most of their life through very challenging times, very challenging situations, their brain may release norepinephrine, and guess what? They may react in ways you don't want to. By the way, depending on your background as a
Yeah.
leader, you may do that too. You don't want to do that. And you have to have an awareness of these aspects of the brain in your team and in yourself, so that when challenges come up, you can make the right decision. And instead of just dictating to people and telling them what to do, you can understand the people that are on your team and how you can interact with them in such a way that they reach radical success, even in ways maybe they didn't think about it. And it's just something to think about, that a lot of people don't realize. The brain acts the same way, but guess what? In my role, if norepinephrine is released in my brain, am I ready to fight if necessary? Yeah.
Yeah.
But have I ever had to? No. And in fact, I will tell you, in fact, I think I've shared this with you, and I think, Jill, you probably heard me share this before on a show a long time ago. But the two times in my life, I've got my black belt in martial
Mm.
arts in Taekwondo. And the two times in my life that I came that close to having to uh, employ martial arts and fight somebody and take them out and everything, the two times in my life, I didn't have to.
Nope.
And the reason for it is, and in fact, the girl that I was dating at the time actually walked up to me after she observed it, and
Uh-huh.
and she was blown away by it because she said, "It's amazing." And I said, "What?" She said, "Those two guys, because in this case there were three people and me, kind of thing." And she said, "You could see one thing," and I said, "What's that?" And she said, "I could see it in their eyes." That they didn't know how to handle somebody who was outnumbered, but was so confident, strong, centered, and all of that. And I said, I was. And she said, they didn't know how to react with that. And I
Wow.
said, oh, okay, cool, cool. And so you got to realize that the aspect of how all of this employs with different people on your team, particularly because most of them don't understand these aspects of the chemicals and the neuroscience and everything. Most of them are just going to go to the chemical and react in a lot of ways. But the bottom line is each person on your team, based on their background, based on their growth, based on their current development, and all of that kind of stuff, they're probably going to have a different sense of that. Are they
Yeah.
still going to be getting those? Yeah. But are they going to react differently in them? Yes. And as a leader, one of the things you have to do is you have to connect with your people in such a way that you understand them, not just from a rote academic superficial thing, but you totally understand them, their experience, what those chemicals are doing to them, perhaps, and also how they're going to reach success in the challenging situation
Yeah.
and do it and interact and lead them in such a way that they get there despite perhaps the things that are making them struggle inside and everything. And it's really kind of interesting on that. And I think I shared this a long time ago, probably about a year and a half or 2 years ago on a show. But one time when I was, and it's one picture of what we're talking about here, based on there was one time when I was the site manager at our detachment at Griffiths Air Force Base up in Rome, New York.
Wow.
And there was one guy that was never a pilot in the Air Force, but everybody else on the team was an aviator from the Air Force. But he, out of a little bit of arrogance, was wearing Air Force wings on his flight suit all the time. And it was ticking off the team members
Okay.
in ways you wouldn't believe. Well, what I did, the way I did it was because I understood about a little of this. What I did is I called them in and we went into a room all alone. And I told them, I said, I want you to understand this is sort of disciplinary in nature, but it's a little different. And what I kind of told them is the impact that that's having on our people.
Wow.
And what do you need to do? Well, guess what? He voluntarily agreed to take them off and not wear them anymore. And what was amazing is the next day I was in my office and I heard, a knock on the door. I said, "Yeah, come on in." And he walked in and he closed the door. He said, "Randy, I just want to thank you for
Wow.
how you interacted with
Wow.
that yesterday." And I said, "I was honored to." And then he looked at me like this and he said, "Randy, can I ask you something?" I said, "What?" He said, "Is there any way that we cannot let the headquarters know about this?" I said, "Listen, buddy, they don't know anything about it. They don't have any need to know about it. All I need is that it's getting fixed." And he said, "You know what, Randy, I'll fix it." I said, "Good deal." And he never wore them again, but also in the way he interacted with people together, the oneness came back to the team just about that quick. And and it was amazing. And in fact, I was actually lauded by the headquarters people at the headquarters of the company, the nationwide headquarters of the company. I was lauded for the difference I had made in that detachment up there. And it's very interesting when you understand this aspect of neuroscience and you understand true leadership. You got to realize that it's not just about you dictating them and telling them what to do, and they better do what I tell them what to do, or you're going to get fired, you're going to get laid off or whatever, kind of thing. That's not really leadership. That's control freakish stuff. Now, are there times based on what's going on that you may have to sort of lead them in such a way where you're just leading the team in a challenging situation? Yeah, there is. But here's what you got as a leader. Here's what you got to be aware of before it ever gets to that point. And here's what you have to do. You have to understand how you're going to truly build the trust in your team, in you, prior to that happening. And
Yeah.
the way that you do that is this aspect of of interacting with your people in such a way that you're not just playing academic games, but you're really connecting with each of your people based on who they are, where they're coming from, and how we're going to get together. And it's just a key aspect of it, but there's a lot of neuroscience aspect of that, kind of wrapped up in that. And like I said, one of the biggest challenges that managers need to realize today
Oof.
is that leadership is not just academic.
Nope.
Sorry. Guess what? Each person in your team is a little different, and
It's true.
how you connect with each one a little different in a positive way is not the same. And you got to be aware of that. And one of the things you look at it from this aspect of these neuroscience chemicals, if you interact with each person on your team in such a way where they think that you believe in them,
Yeah.
and they think that you're connecting with them in a way that nobody else has, guess what? Amazing things can happen. And when a challenging situation comes on the scene, they believe in you, they believe in the team, and they believe in what they can accomplish. And that's just something to think about. And as you know, one of the dysfunctions that we see a lot of places in society right now
Yeah.
is in a lot of ways you have people that all they want to do is fire up the emotions on their people so that when something comes on, they can just get their people to follow them and tell them what to do and just go do this and go do that, kind of thing. Are there some aspects where you got to kind of lead that and tell them? Yeah, but you engender distrust if all you're doing is just firing up the emotions so you can control them. What happens is you're causing their mental aspects in this to just throw aside
Yeah.
because I'm not supposed to understand any of this. If somebody just has their emotions such that you want them to just shut down and do what you say, all of this other stuff
Yeah.
goes aside. And you know what?
Yeah.
They can't envision the radical success in the situation themselves. And they should be able to, because guess what? If you have 7 people on your team and one of them sees one possibility that nobody else does, guess what? That may be the radical success factor that nobody else saw. So when you talk about leading your team, it's just a very critical aspect of it that a lot of people don't fully understand. But like I say, this neuroscience aspect and knowing how it plays out, and then also knowing that not every single person on your team is exactly the same. And how are you going to interact with them truly as a successful leader in such a way that your team can bring radical success to the company, to your team, perhaps to your city, to your country, who knows, kind of thing, kind of thing. How are you going to be able to do that? And that's just something that is a key part of leadership that so often people don't think about.
Mhm. Well, I don't know where you come up with this stuff. Your mind the neuroplasticity. But I've been speaking to you for over a year, and every time we speak, but I'm flawed because you just God gave you a gift. We all have our gifts, but you
Mhm.
are just ow. You hit on different topics every time, teaching us something every time. So humble. So I mean, thank you.
Well, my
And
pleasure, and it's
I would
always an
think by
honor
a
to be
year
on
we'd
here.
have we still have more time together. I'm not cutting you short, but I'm just flabbergasted because I sit here and I listen to you and I'm listening and then I'm listening and I'm deeper and deeper and it's like I'm in a trance with what you're saying because never did I think about this role of leadership and how and then it always relates to something in my head and I'm sure it's relating to other people, but yeah. Okay,
Well,
continue.
well, you know what? That's all I'll say is that's my purpose. When you talk about bringing freedom to potential,
Yes.
I'm not somebody that just wants to go out and have people necessarily pat me on the back or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. My goal, and this is a big goal, as you know, with the Hollywood movie documentary that's being marketed out there now, and also my autobiography. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, certified two jet pilots yesterday for their first
Yeah.
certification at one level and everything. And one of them had already ordered my autobiography and he asked me if I'd sign it and I did, kind of thing for him and stuff. But the bottom line is both of those, it's not about calling attention to me.
Yeah.
It's not about just, somebody patting me on the back or whatever. I mean, if somebody does, okay, I'll appreciate that. But
Yeah.
you know what? The purpose of it for me is that even long after I'm no longer here, people may not remember my name, and that's okay. My big thing is that people learned some insights along the way that they applied directly in their own lives, not in an academic situation, but in a real scenario situation in which they lived that brought them results that they would have never expected. And that's what I'm about. That's my passion. It's not about me. It's about making a difference in people that I interact with, people that I connect with, the world, whatever. And so it really is, and I appreciate what you just said, and I'm humbled about by that. But that's my goal, and I don't, it's that's my big purpose. That's what I'm all about.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, we have only a limited time left, but any news updates, more unfortunate aviation accidents though, since we speak. And, you just always have like the best knowledge about these things. Anything that we should be aware of in the news. And I still believe and know that, right? Flying is still
Well,
the safest form of transportation, even though we keep hearing about these horrific crashes, right?
yeah,
But
and it is, but what you're saying is exactly correct because
okay.
if you look at the number of crashes that have existed over the last, probably 6 or 7 or 8 months, it has gone up somewhat. And the other part of that too is just to realize that why it happens and what do we have to be aware of. Even as a pilot, if all you're doing is going with rote academic scenario situations, you're missing the boat. You have
Yep.
to have a true reality of that situation and what the radical success is for that situation. And and it is a key. And guess what? That's a true part of any part of life now. But it's when you got people depending on you, um, because they're in the back of your airplane and everything. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
of the family that died because they just had their funeral and all that. The five family
Mm-hmm.
members that died in that helicopter crash.
And New
When I
York,
first
yeah.
heard about that, everything in me just went, oh man, kind of thing. And but you know what? Regardless of what part of life we're in, we got to be thinking about some of this. We got to be thinking about not just going with rote academic and then blaming things. Well, it should have been this way. It wasn't, you know. And how is your neuroscience clicking in? How is the chemicals clicking in to make you either set aside the actual success or whatever. And those are things that people need to think about. When you're talking about coaching, it's not about you just telling people what to do. It's about helping them develop along the way so that they know what to do when radical results get in the way or whatever. Radical situations come into play, and particularly if it's unpredictable or VUCA, variable, uncertain, changing, and adaptive, kind of thing, which is so much of our society now, and it's so much of business today. And can you make those decisions? And you got to have your team, you got to have your family, and really, amazingly enough, when you think about your kids coming up and grandkids, there's a small degree where that has to be kind of brought in a little bit for their development. And I've got 2 great grandkids that I love to death, and I'll never put aside. And but one of them is about to turn in just about another 3 or 4 days is about to turn 15, and the young lady that she seems to be becoming blows my mind in a positive way, because of a lot of her reality in this with some of the challenges she went through. And she's doing amazing. So, it's just a key area, but it's also an area of where a coaching facilitative style and a neuroscience awareness must be applied to real coaching. It's not just telling people what to do, and it's not just, coaching, about some rote superficial academic things, but truly helping people get the radical results, clarity in their mind, and how to get there. What are the struggle points, and what am I going to do when the struggle points come on scene so that we can get there? And that's all a part of this for sure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Randy, how can we contact you?
Okay, you can go to my website, Coaching for Relevance, which is right up here, as you can see, and Coaching for Relevance. And right on the homepage at the very bottom of it, it has my cell phone number and my email number. And like I said, if somebody wants to have a quick conversation, I don't do cold call sales pitches or anything like that. I just have conversations with people. If somebody has a need, we'll come up with what we need. But they can find that information on my homepage and give me a call if they want.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure seeing you. And
it's always a pleasure seeing you too. Always great to be here with you.
Thank you, Randy. Same here. Enjoy your day, and thank you for being flexible with the schedule, as always. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Take care now.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.